So we're so thrilled to bring this next guest back to the Rail Talk studio, just a couple weeks away from tax day and just 5 days away from Sandman running in the Arkansas Derby. He's the founder and the CEO of the Green Group and DJ Stable. Len Green, welcome back to the show.
Hey, it's great to be here, and it's great to see how well you guys are doing, not only for yourself, but also attracting new clients to me. And publicly, let me say that even though I started DJ Stables, one of the smartest things I did was turn it over to John, who's done a wonderful job with it.
John,
I don't have a follow-up question. I'm sorry. I'm all
John's been waiting 55 years for that kind of love.
You know, we're live right now, Dad, right? We're recording.
Let's keep it going.
Okay. So what changes have occurred in the tax code that people should be concerned about, or that they should take notice if they're not using the Green Group, if they should take notice that their accountants may have missed?
John, there's so many things that are mixed because of the fact that this is such a specialized industry. And to ask any CPA to specialize in this if they don't do it every day in the week is really very, very hard. So the answer really is it depends on what type of horse that you have. Do you have a claimer? Do you have an allowance horse? Do you have a stake horse? Because the expenses vary so much. Same thing here. Okay, there are so many specialized things. Let me give you some examples of some of the ones that we've examined this year because people have sent it to us. When Joe says, Len will give you a free analysis. These people think 3 or 4 hours, but basically, when I look at these returns, there are so many of the same common mistakes that are being made. For instance, let's say you get a West Point K1, and let's say it happens to have a loss on it. Well, most accountants are just taking the loss. They don't realize that you can add to that loss your home office expense, your travel to the track. Those types of things are not on the K1 because the K1 only reflects what West Point paid out. It doesn't show what you've pointed out. Also, people say to me, well, my accountant says that I haven't got 500 hours, so therefore it's inactive and I can't take a deduction. You don't realize that if you join an organization or a syndicate like West Point, it's not 500 hours, it's 100 hours. And what happens if you listen to your show every week? Well, you got an extra 100 hours of the 500 right then and there.
It might even be 200 hours if Tinky's on.
Yeah.
Hope Tinky's not a client.
We love you, Tink.
All right. If you're going to keep on doing it, I can't concentrate now.
I'm sorry to mess up your role.
We'll
jump right back into it. Other common mistakes, Len, that people make.
Okay. They forget to put their home office on. The law changed a couple of years ago. In fact, they make it so easy for you to take a home office if you do that. But how many people who have horse ownership, you put it the other way, most people who have horse ownership follow the races. They go on the TV for things. They watch this. Those are all counted, and you can take some deductions for the home office expense. Another thing is many people, when I looked at the returns, I say, well, this last year you had this horse. Well, yeah, we gave it away. What do you mean you gave it away? You gave it away to who? I gave it away to one of these horse organizations that use it, like Stable Recovery and well, heck, you're eligible for a tax deduction for that. Again, I don't criticize the other people. It's just if you don't do it every day, you don't realize that these things are available. And the same thing in horse ownership. Okay, if you're not doing planning and calculating and seeing what the best races are, if you're leaving it to somebody else, well, then you put your hands behind your back. Okay, you wouldn't do that in your real business. You got to treat this as a real business. And then the biggest thing that's happening is that the IRS, because they've cut down on the number of agents, have shifted to, hey, let's have the agents not concentrate on saying that these deductions are not allowable. Let's go after the fact that it's a hobby. And if it's a hobby, well, the income is still included in income, but none of the deductions are allowed. So you really got to look at the strategy. You can't just be doing tax returns and somebody shows a loss, put the loss down. You got to question them. Hey, has your strategy changed? Maybe your losses have continued, but has your strategy changed? Are you putting yourself in a position to possibly make money in the future?
Right.
I'm not pushing, West Point, but for instance, with West Point, you have the opportunity to invest in a Sandman. And if Sandman worked, well, then the sky's the limit as far as income is concerned.
Yeah. So go ahead, John.
No, I was going to say that's a really good point. One of the questions that we actually got from our audience is with regard to these digital sales. Now, Phasig has been revolutionized that sector of the market with their now monthly digital sales. The question is, I think that what the audience member was asking is, depending on the calendar, when you buy a broodmare or when you buy a racehorse or when you buy a yearling, does it affect depreciation depending on when during the year you buy a horse?
Great, John. The old rules used to be that if you bought the horse on June 30th, you got a half a year's depreciation. If you bought it on September 15th, you got 1 quarter. That's changed now. You can elect to take the whole year, even if you buy it, John, on December 31st. And even if you don't pay for it until next year, you still can deduct, based on the limitations of this. But most of it doesn't depend on the month.
Got it. Good. Interesting point about the IRS before. I was curious about that with a lot of the changes, with the new Trump administration. The IRS is going to have fewer agents, slash the budget, I assume. How does that change things for you and for your clients?
Joe, now, as I said, before it used to be disallowing deductions. Then it was shifting to making sure you're active versus passive, because if you're passive, you can't take the losses against your ordinary income. And now they've shifted to hobby. And if you have losses for a certain number of years, that's a red flag as far as they're concerned. And it's very hard to convince somebody whose job it is to raise money that at their level, they can let it go. So most of the time that we're finding the hobby losses now, we have to go to the next circuit, to be able to do it and to compromise, et cetera, kind of thing, because the agent just wants to disallow.
Right. Yep.
What do you mean by the next circuit?
Of appeals.
Got it. Okay.
And as far as other tax tips that you have, I know you've recommended to clients, if they have a big enough breeding program and racing program, they should separate it. Why is that?
Well, because there are certain rules for breeding that are not for racing. You buy a racehorse. That's a racehorse. You got to depreciate the racehorse. And there are limitations now, John, as to what percentage of that racehorse you can write off. You buy a broodmare in foal, you can take the in foal as a stud fee. 100% is deductible. And the rest of it is depreciated over a period of time. Plus the fact that you want to separate it because you're given more years to produce profits in a broodmare operation, because you decided to breed now. You breed. A year later, you have a weanling, hopefully. Then you get a yearling. Then you decide if you want to sell. So you have a leeway period. You buy a racehorse, it either produces or it doesn't produce.
Right. Joe, I have another question, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Shoot.
So,
you guys, I can just let you guys talk.
So without giving away the company's secret, okay, with everything that Trump is doing with regard to tariffs and other countries are doing as far as reverse tariffs, you're wearing a Danica O'Brien jacket who races in Ireland. Are there advantages or disadvantages to buying European horses to come in? Same thing with Canadian horses. Again, without giving away any company secrets, are there differences? And if so, shouldn't their accountants know about them?
They certainly should. And I wrote a letter to one of our clients today that said, because he asked me, what happens if I have a Canadian horse, and I sell it in the United States? And the answer is, if it's here already before April 7th, well, then it's not subject to the tariff. If it's not here by then, there is a tariff. On the other hand, are we going to pass along the tariff to the buyer the same as we pass along the sales tax to the buyer? But yes, there are certainly some considerations there. Also, when you're bringing over the income, you got to understand that some of it is subject to variations. So you can't just say, hey, I earn so much overseas. It's how much you earn, what's the exchange rate, what's the cost for getting it over here. All those are built in. And it was interesting. Some of my clients went over last year to run in the Royal, and they had to buy tux. Believe it or not, the tux are tax deductible. The trip was tax deductible because they went there for the main reason for riding those things. If you're not in this kind of business, you would never know those things.
Yeah, 100%. Well, that's why I'm curious. You've gotten, I think, a lot of referrals from the show, a lot of referrals from West Point. What are some of the common questions that people first ask you, like when they first sit down with you? What's the first or second question they ask Len Green?
They usually say, why didn't my accountant say that West Point was tax deductible because we were active? Because they said, I don't put 500 hours in. And they don't realize that there's a special rule, Joe, that says if you're part of a syndicate, it's 100 hours. Number two, they don't realize that part of being in West Point and some of the others like West Point, and there are only a few of them like West Point, but okay, West Point is a social kind of thing. You're making contacts in business. So if you're in business, okay, I'm up to Saratoga sometime and you are in the morning. You guys almost take over the breakfast area.
That's right. The coffee stand is ours.
For networking and other things on it, kind of thing. And you get a chance to talk to other people. You get a chance to talk to the trainers. That's invaluable.
Yeah, totally.
And with regard to partnerships, not so much like a West Point, but maybe if you're a bigger owner and you're partnering with a couple other owners, if you each own, I'm using an example, if you each own a third of a racehorse, does that mean that if it's an LLC that you each get a third of the expenses and the depreciation?
Very good question. And the last question is, if each owns a third, what would happen to the other 1%?
That always goes to my sister, apparently. I don't know why that is, but okay.
The 0.1%.
0.1%. Yes, we're very, very dutiful on percentages.
I know my math.
Yeah.
I know my math. Somebody asked, what does DJ Stable stand for? John, you have to. It depends on how you're setting up that partnership. If you set it up as ownership in common, well, then each of you has a third, and each of you then takes 1/3 of the deductions. If you want to take accelerated depreciation, you can. If I want to take straight line depreciation, I can. So you have the choice of doing. If you're in a partnership, the partnership makes the decision on what depreciation and what kind of deductions it takes and what it capitalizes and what not. So again, the ideal is if you want to join the syndicate, then you don't have to worry about the 500 hours, it's 100. If you're going to own it as interest in common, well, then you're back to the 500 hours.
Got it. Let's talk about the horse for a second. And the horse I mean is the big horse, Sandman, on Saturday. John's got the shirts printed up. I don't know. I assume you can write that off, John.
Absolutely.
Just give me your reaction, Len, to his development under Mark Casse ever since some unnamed genius put you and West Point together to buy this horse.
I can't remember, Joe, whether it was I picked the horse out because it was going to be inexpensive or it was gray. And we've had a lot of success with gray horses, including Do It With Style, et cetera, kind of thing. But again, when you get to the point of having to make a decision, then it really becomes a business because you say to yourself, okay, I don't think I can afford $1.2 million. And I say to John, as much as everybody loves it, and it has a great gait and it has a great sense of about it kind of thing, $1.2 million is a lot of money, especially for a colt, because it almost has to be a Derby contender to have any shot at it. But just assuming for a moment that the horse does well in the Arkansas Derby or does well in the Kentucky Derby, the limit that goes way up because you got the breeding already there in place by a named stallion, and then you really have a chance to hit the home runs. Whereas the fillies, you got to have a great eye, as I say, okay, for John to pick out, Jaywalk or Wonder Wheel, because the only way you can really make a lot of money on that is if it wins the Breeders' Cup or something like that. So again, in your strategy, it's same as you got to mix. If you're doing the stock market, everybody says, well, it's common sense when if you want to make a chance to make more money, well, then you go in different directions as far as your investments, bonds, stocks, growth stocks, etc. Why not do the same thing for the horse business? You've got to have a chance to do that. And the biggest chance is to get involved with something that if it does work, the sky's the limit.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you one more question, and it has nothing to do with business. It's all personal. What has this past year or so meant to you as far as having a homebred like Nitrogen, having Dream On, having 8 or 9 or 10 horses that are running and competing well in graded stake races? Sandman on as the icing on the cake. What has that meant to you as somebody who's been in the business for 40 plus years?
I would say, John, this is, in all the 40 plus years, this potentially is the best year we could ever have. Okay? Not only if the horses win or not, just the potential of being there and being where we are and having the types of horses that we are. Not that we didn't get excited about the $5,000 claimers way back when, but now it's if it makes it, there's real recognition of the fact. And again, from a personal point of view, having lost a lot of money in the horse business before you came aboard, if the IRS ever comes along, and if we do have the kind of year that we're having this year, that's a great defense that our strategy is working. But from a personal point of view, John, it's exciting because as I get on in years, okay, the CPA firm, as I started to say before, okay, we have 400 returns out the door last year at this time. We have 691 out the door this year. Well, I can build that up. I can build the people here. I can teach. I can be involved in other investments and things. And you take care of the details and make some of the decisions. I mean, I make the big decisions, like, am I going to the races or not? But seriously, it's a great thrill. And the end result is your sisters are now interested in coming to the Derby or something like that. Never happened before.
Nope.
Tell them there's no room on the plane. Joe's got to come.
There might not be. That's true.
So my choice is my daughter or put Joe Bianco on the wing. Is that what?
On the wing, exactly. Exactly.
Your daughter or your favorite son?
Yeah, all right.
Aaron Ugota's coming. If that's the favorite son, if that's what you're asking. Yeah, welcome to my world, Joe.
but again, guys, I think your show differs now from the old TDN and what have you, because of the fact you're actually tackling the real issues and making a difference. And if I can make a difference as far as saving them some taxes, that's fine and dandy. But don't stop doing what you're doing and stop having the kind of people that you have on, because this is the only place that people can hear that kind of thing from.
I appreciate it, and we appreciate you and your sponsorship and your partnership. And I just love that Sandman is a West Point and a DJ horse, so we all have that in common. It's a real family horse. So can't wait to hang out with you down in Hot Springs this weekend. Thanks for the ride preemptively, and thanks for coming on and for doing so much for us and our viewers.
Keep it on, and don't edit my stuff out.
And we can't Patty, promise that, but we'll.
Patty, you hear that?